I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. So, on this first episode, it's going to be our testimonies and how this honestly just came to be. So, do you want to go first?
No, you can go first. It's going to be a lot about like our friendship because that's really like where our testimonies start and like obviously how this podcast came to be. So,
Right. And disclaimer, even if I am talking to her, we'll be looking back there. There's a mirror behind the phone.
yes.
And also, my dog, she barks a lot. So, please just don't mind. But testimonies. So, Hannah and we have gone to this same church for probably, I started going there when I was 12, so about 8 years now.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
I feel like I've been saying 8 years for probably 8 years. But I met Hannah at church. So we were both raised in church, church girlies all our lives. But her and I weren't really like close friends until about 2021. So I got into a relationship with someone. Love him. Like, he is great. He is of the Lord now. But at the time, we were both struggling pretty bad. I was making decisions that weren't according to God's word while claiming to live in God's word. Lukewarm. We will. That's a whole other podcast. But we just weren't doing things like we knew we should have. The relationship honestly kind of tore me apart because I let it. I wouldn't blame anyone in that situation. We were both like 16 years old. But that is when Hannah came into my life, and she was kind of like a lifeboat for me, honestly. She brought me back to the Lord. Our friendship brought me back to the Lord, and everything just kind of started rolling from then on. So you can give your perspective while I go get my dog real quick.
Yeah, so I was honestly like I didn't really have like a close like best friend. Like I was just kind of like there. Um I hung out with people from my church that I've known my whole life, and me and Maddie didn't really like. It's not that we didn't get along, but we just didn't really hang out. Like we just didn't. I honestly don't know like where it started. I know that like you were struggling with your relationship, so that is when we became friends because she knew she needed somebody that was going to fill her up and not tear her down about it.
Right.
And I remember I had some people like, why are you doing this? Like, you already know that she was in a bad relationship. She knew she was in a bad relationship. Like, this is something that she needs to do on her own because she got herself there on her own. And I just remember thinking, like, I would rather her come to me than somebody that's going to steer her the wrong direction. Like, I feel like the Lord placed me in her life to help her in a godly way. Obviously, I didn't have my entire life together, but I was like, I feel like the Lord put me in her life to help her in a godly way and not steer her the wrong direction, like drugs or alcohol. Like, absolutely not. So, yeah, you can go on.
So after a while, your girl was caught up with the love bug real bad. I will be so honest. Like, back then, I feel like even up until just like 2 years ago, I would say that I found a lot of my value in relationships with boys.
Yeah.
And even if I had the best, excuse me, the best friends in the entire world, I still felt this void, which was the void that was there because I didn't have Jesus.
Yeah.
Pepper. um, but I would seek for this hole to be filled with these relationships with men. So shortly after we had become so close, I got into another relationship, and this one honestly was even worse because I got to the point where I was willing to sacrifice having a godly man just to make myself feel better.
Yeah, it was definitely unequally yoked. Like,
oh,
the
for
definition.
Sure. But like I said, this is no hate to anyone else,
Yeah,
okay? Because
no.
I was making these decisions too. This wasn't all them. I'm not calling anyone out and saying they're horrible people. I'm just saying I was making decisions that I knew were not right for me. And I was purposefully walking away from the Lord because I didn't think that that was enough for me at the time. Peppers hung in the light. We're back. So the point was, I got in another relationship, and it eventually ended with me saying that I wasn't going to be with him because I had different goals in life, like godly goals, because I was of God and he was not.
Yeah.
But
Man regretted it.
Big butt. It's a big butt. Prepare yourself. I definitely I had given up what was filling that void for me.
Yeah.
But I did not replace it with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I had even said that I was ending that relationship because of the Lord, but I still didn't pursue him after that.
Yeah.
So since I didn't fill that void, I practically went back. Y'all, this is embarrassing. Never do this, okay? I went back to him and I asked to get back together, and thank God this was the Lord. This was Lord, because I'm telling you, my life would look so different if that would have gone through. Thank God he said no.
Yeah.
And I started spiraling. But that was my own fault, because even in this moment, me being raised in church, me knowing, I knew better. And I still started spiraling over a boy.
Yeah.
Over a boy. And everyone's like, oh, it's just a boy. But it wasn't at that time. It was my distraction.
Yeah.
It was like a drug for me, because I was using that to fill a gap for something that it can never fill.
Yeah.
So then I'll let you give this next part, because I feel like you have a better perspective on it.
About this time last year?
Yes.
Okay, so like she said, like she got rid of him and then she regretted it. I remember like going through all that. I was like, I was trying so hard. And one night I was talking to my mom and dad, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. This was probably about like, you were going on this, you guys broke up like May, and it was it was January of 2024.
Yeah.
So it was like
7 months.
7 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, every time, like, we would be doing something and we would be having so much fun, like roller skating, being like having a blast. And then we'd get in the car and she'd be like, I'm not happy. And I was like, we literally just had the most joyful time. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I was like, I feel like, I was talking to my mom and dad, and I was like, I feel like she got rid of him, but like she said, she was not pursuing God. Like, she got rid of him to pursue God, but she's not doing that. And I think she's trying to fill it with talking about him to me, or like talking about her situation to me. And I was like, I'm not God. I am her best friend and I'm a godly person. I love the Lord, but I'm not God. And I was talking to them, and they are very wise people. I love them. I was talking to them and they were like, maybe you should step back. They were like, if you're sitting here crying, because I was so upset. Like, me and Maddie, we have like a spiritual connection. The Lord really did put us together for a reason.
Yeah.
But at that time, like, what was breaking her heart was breaking my heart. She was depressed, so I was depressed. And I had no reason to be. Like, anytime she would ask me what was wrong, I'd be like, I don't know. I literally do not know what's wrong. I'm just sad. And so I decided that I prayed about it for a long time. I was sobbing. And I was at work one day, and I was like, if she does it again, if she just randomly starts talking about this relationship or her problem, about whatever, I was like, I'm going to tell her that we should take a step back. And so I was at work, and she texted me and she was talking about it, and I was like, Maddie, I think we need to not like hang out anymore, not talk anymore. Like, I want to take a big step back. I didn't want to just do it because I didn't want to leave her, but I wanted her to know. And she was confused. Honestly, I was confused. And she's a person that like wants a lot of answers. And I was like, I really don't have an answer. I really don't. And I feel like she was upset about that. And obviously I would probably be upset about that too. Like, I wasn't mad, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I think you just need, I didn't say anything about like her pursuing God. I wanted her to figure that on her own. I was like, I just think we need to take a step back. And she's like, well, for how long? And I was like, I don't know, maybe forever. I don't know. Like, we don't know what's to come. I was like, but I just know this is what's right for right now. And so we didn't talk. I was I was home for a week and then I was going to be gone for 2. So we didn't talk for like a month. And if you know me and Maddie, you know that is not like us. Like,
Yeah.
especially in this point in our life,
Yeah.
we were literally together every day. Like, not even just talking. Like, we were together almost every day.
Mm.
And so I go on my trip and we don't text, we don't talk. Um, and I'll let you take it from here because, like,
Okay, so when that happened, I was also at work when she texted me. I'm actually going to back up a little bit. I was so distraught.
mm-hmm.
And like now I can't even comprehend exactly why or how that felt anymore because like we'll get there, but I genuinely was like so broken. And it's hard to describe that to someone who hasn't gone through it. And people want to be like really, I don't know the word. They don't want to talk about relationships in like your teenage years because they
Yeah.
think that they're insignificant
Mm-hmm.
and that you're just like highly emotional and where your hormones are crazy, like your emotions are heightened. And
Which is all true.
that is true.
Yeah.
But those emotions are also real.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a teenager and you're listening to this, your emotions are real,
Mm-hmm.
but those emotions are also to be submitted to the Lord.
Yeah.
Those don't
Because,
control you unless you let them.
yes, because if you let them control you, then where's the Lord in that?
And I want to like I want to just say this. I'm not acting like your feelings aren't valid.
Yeah.
Okay? I understand bad things happen. I went through things that hurt my feelings. I went through things that absolutely broke me. However, I let them.
Mm-hmm.
I let them. You can feel those feelings, but I wasn't just feeling, I was identifying with that.
Mm-hmm.
Any conversation I had, it was about that.
Yeah.
Any thought I had, it was about that. Any action I had, it was because of that.
Yeah. And can I add, like, she was so far into it. I literally remember her saying, she was like, I'm going to talk about it because it makes me feel better. And I was like, does it though? Because you continue to talk about it, but it continues to hurt you. So does it really make you feel better, or does it make you like go back to that time where you remember how you felt with that person and in that relationship?
Yeah. I almost feel like since I lost that relationship, I felt like that was like the last little thread of it I had
Yeah.
left. And that if I could always talk about it, I could always keep the potential of it in my
Like,
life.
I can tell you, I probably heard the same stories 15 times.
Right.
Like, honestly.
Yeah.
And I would just
Because,
sit there and listen to them because, like, I didn't want to be mean or rude because I was the only one she could talk to. Um, but then I really realized, like, I wasn't the only one that she could talk to.
yeah. So, from my perspective, it felt like the whole world was crashing down. And outside view, like outside perspective, especially from older people, like I got a bunch of like, this is so insignificant, like you're acting silly. And from a godly perspective now, yes, that is
Mm-hmm.
silly. But my whole identity was ripped away.
Yeah.
Everything I thought I was, which that's not who I am. I'm not my relationship. I am now engaged. He is not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
He is a part of my life. He is a blessing from God, but he is not who I am.
Yeah.
So during those 2 weeks, I was forced to be alone. And also, side note, during this entire time, I continuously told Hannah I was going to leave church and not come back
Yeah.
because I was going to become the person that that person would want to be with because
Yeah.
he wasn't of God. So I was going to make myself not of God either because I thought that if I could change and throw God out of my life as well, then I would become desirable to him.
And to tag on
Like,
to
isn't
that,
that crazy?
yeah, and
That
then
is
to tag
crazy.
on to that, like, that's when I realized, like, this is getting bad.
Yeah.
Like, I can't help her. I literally cannot help her. I thought, like, and that's kind of where I was wrong too. Like, I thought that I could help her, and that's why I listened, and that's why I tried to talk her through it. But I always talk like I've seen people close to me waste their breath on people saying the same thing over and again. over and over again. And I realized that's what I was doing with her. She knows how I feel. She knows my take on it. So why do I keep talking about it? Why do I keep letting her talk about it? And that's what I told my parents. I was like, I can't keep doing this. And so that's when I realized it was getting super bad. And that's when I went to my parents.
Yeah. So, those 2 weeks, when she texted me, I was immediately defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, if you're immediately defensive, you probably need to go talk to the Lord because
Yeah.
there's something that you're trying to guard
Yeah.
that is not of Him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I immediately got offensive. I was like, well, why do you feel this way? Like, is there someone else you just want to talk to that I like wouldn't like you talking to me? Like going on this whole rant.
Yeah.
Very, very salty, very, very toxic. Like that was a low point, and I'm so, 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 so thankful that that did not drive her away forever.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't even my character.
Yeah.
That was just me spiraling, continuing
Mm-hmm.
to. So I was really upset. That evening I went home, I was crying, and throughout the beginning of this, I was throwing a big pity party. I was like, the whole world just hates me because first he left me and now she's not talking to me anymore. So I was taking identity in all the bad things that were happening to me.
Yeah.
I was putting on this identity of, oh, I'm a victim, and everything in my life is not because of me. It's not because of my decisions. All these people just hate me so much, and
Mm-hmm.
I just can't do this. Like I took on this mentality that I wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
And let's be so for real right now. I was definitely the problem. So, while she went on her cruise, I found myself in my house. I still live with my parents at the moment. We are in my bedroom. But my parents were gone. My whole family was gone. And the house was completely quiet. And I hadn't prayed in a really long time, obviously, because I had like pushed God away because I was like, I don't really want to identify with this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was skipping church. It was bad. But I walked out of my room. The house was dark. It was evening. And I just remember feeling like God was like, "Hey, this is like the perfect time. Like just sit down and talk to me. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to get your attention. I'm being gentle about it. So just please give it a try."
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down on the floor and I just listened, and I heard silence. And for the first time, y'all don't even understand. Like my mind was always racing.
Mm-hmm.
For nearly 8 months, for the first time I heard silence, and it broke me. I sat in my floor and sobbed because that was the Lord.
Yeah.
That was the Lord. He gave me peace.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I realized this is where my peace is found. My peace is not found in a relationship. Girls that are listening, boys that are listening, teenagers specifically, this world will preach to you that your peace and your hope and your fulfillment is found in relation. It is not.
Yeah.
The only relationship that is found in is your relationship with the Lord, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because I searched in relationships for my purpose and I could never find it. And that is
Yeah.
why I was left so broken with a racing mind. I had panic attacks. I constantly had anxiety. Sometimes I would have to step out of church services because I would get so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that is because I was becoming all these problems in my life because I was choosing that.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, okay, well, I don't have Hannah. I don't have this boy anymore. So I guess you'll become my best friend.
Yeah.
So over those 2 weeks, I read my Bible a lot. For honestly, I claimed to be a Christian all my life. I did.
Yeah.
But for the first time in my life, like I consistently read.
Yeah.
And Hannah texted me after she got back, and
Can I say something though? When I did text her, it was literally the dumbest thing. There was this girl on the cruise, and um, She was wearing a bun, and I kept looking at her. And Maddie at church camp the camp before all this happened, Maddie at church camp wore this pink t-shirt and wore her hair in the same type of bun.
That's so
and this girl was walking around, and every time I would turn, I thought it was Maddie. Like, every time she'd be in the corner, and that's literally, I texted her for the first time in 3 weeks. She
texted me like a desperate ex. She was for real, like, I saw someone and they made me think of you. But the transformation happened in that time.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, I started becoming who I was meant to be.
Yeah.
And she could see that. Mm-hmm. So she came back into my life because she was like, okay, like, this is the green light from God that she is ready to be back in this friendship with me.
Yeah.
So I was obviously really happy because this is like my sister. And I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I was going to lose my mind. But that is kind of our friendship story. That is what got us so close. Obviously, there are so many other parts of that. Yeah. But you'll hear more of those throughout different episodes. But that is what brought us here. Mm-hmm. Me being really jacked up. Yeah.
And she still had a lot of work. Like, she went back to the first boyfriend a few times. Like, even after all this. She tried to. Like, it wasn't like a relationship thing.
Praise God, he said no.
And stuff like that. She was more mature about it. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is, like, I need this. But you could definitely tell, like, that was her past. And it's hard. I was listening to a preacher, and I went to Winter Fire recently. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's a camp. And I was listening to this preacher, and he was talking about how crucifying yourself, it's not just okay, I'm saved, I'm done. Do you know how long people hang on the crosses when they're being crucified?
Right.
Up to 48 hours.
Yeah.
And it could be even longer than 2 days. I mean, it could be 3 weeks. It could be 2 years. I mean, it took Maddi a long time, even after she was saved, to heal.
Let me just say, this took from the end of 2022 up until the beginning of 2024.
Yeah.
So it was a long, hard process, and it's not going to be fun, and your flesh is going to scream. It's like, there's so many voices in your head. This is the best way I can describe this. There's so many voices in your head screaming all these things at you.
Yeah.
That is your flesh.
Yeah.
The voice of God is not going to be like that.
Yeah.
Okay? The voice of God is not going to speak doubt over your life. It's not going to speak that you're worthless. It's not going to be giving you anxiety. It will be quiet. It'll be peaceful. And you will know.
You'll be certain, because he does not give us the spirit of confusion. Right. That is of the devil.
Yeah.
So after all that, we were friends again. Like, it took us, we definitely went slow. Like, it was definitely like regaining trust on both sides. Because, I mean, she probably still did feel, I mean, we haven't really talked about it much, but I bet she probably did feel betrayed still. I mean, she was still healing, and I still felt like nervous to go back. I didn't want to go back into the same cycle, you know? And if any of you have even broken up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you know how that feels. Like, that's how it felt. This was worse than a breakup. Like, this is worse than any breakup I've seen anybody go through. Like, it was only 4 weeks, but, like, it was bad. Like, I was crying to my mom and dad about this. Like, that's crazy. But we did slowly get back to pretty much where we were. Honestly, we were talking after this, and we were like, the way that we are so connected just because of Jesus. Like, you know that it's because we're both on the same page. Because our relationship was honestly getting kind of unequally yoked.
Yeah.
And when we got on the same page, that's when the Lord revealed to us that we are literally, like, spiritually connected. He literally put us in each other's lives for a reason. And we didn't know what that reason was.
No.
We didn't even really think about it that way. We were just kind of like, we're in this together. We didn't think there was like a specific end goal. Do you want to tell them the story about like before camp, or do you want me to?
We can both give our perspective,
Okay.
I feel.
So, before camp 2024, before camp 2024, we were in the car and we always joked like we should start a podcast. And one of our friends, her name's Katie. I'm gonna name drop her. Her name's Katie.
Hi, Katie. We love you.
She called us while we were going to camp, and she was like, "Hey," and we were like, "Hey, welcome to our podcast." And she was like, "What?" And we were like, "We just talk, and you can listen." And she was like, "Okay." So we were talking about it, and then when she hung up, I looked at Maddi and I was like, "I really think that we should really pray and fast about this podcast." And she was like, "Okay," like, because we always joked about it. We didn't really think that was going to happen. And so we get to camp, and like, she is in a relationship with a boy, and some things happen with me, and I get like, I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, we are at camp, and some things get revealed to her, some things get revealed to me, and that's when she gets in a relationship with her now fiance, which she'll tell that story.
Yeah.
And I made some decisions after camp, and we had already we were like, "Oh my gosh, yes, Jesus told us like we need to start the podcast." We didn't have a date. We didn't know when we were going to. We just said we got like it's confirmed. Like we're going to do it. We just don't know when. Well, it's a new relationship. She's distracted with her boyfriend. I'm distracted with what's going on in my life. And we get to about November, and I break. Like, oh my gosh, I lose it. Like, I'm not okay. I literally have never sobbed in front of Maddi before, but I was in her car sobbing. I was with my mom sobbing. Like, I don't, if anybody knows me, I don't cry.
Yeah.
Like, in front of people. I'm not, and even if I do, like, it's a few tears on the altar or something like that. Like, I don't sob. And it was rough. And honestly, I feel like Maddi can attest to this. I don't know if I'm just like oblivious. After that night of me like crying in her car, I left it. I didn't talk about it. I was really struggling still, but I didn't talk about it. I'm not one to talk about my feelings. I don't want to burden people. I want people to burden me with their feelings, but I'm not that way. If you want to give your like perspective on that before I go any further.
Okay, so right before camp, I mean, we were having the time of our lives. Like, just two girls living it up in the Lord. Like, we were great.
Yes.
But we got to camp. Before we even got there, I feel like we talked about how this was going to be a week. Our camp is a week long. A week of, like, really seeking and trying to find some answers to questions that we've had a long time. So I'll give you my little love story real quick. So actually, there was a boy, and I had just wrote off relationships because I was like, I really need to focus on the Lord, because I had bad experiences with relationships previously.
Yeah.
But give me 1 second. I gotta let my dog out of the room. But Hannah thought this boy was cute.
Well, we're telling that part of the story.
Oh, we are telling that part of the story. So, Hannah thought this boy was cute. And so, obviously...
Before she goes any further, if anybody knows me again, I don't talk to guys that I think are cute. Like, I do not go to people, like, I'm like, they will come to me. Like, I don't go to people.
But me, however, I kind of, like, high-key forced her to be around this man because I was like, well, I'm going to go hang out with his friend group. So you're gonna follow me because we are always pretty much together.
Yes.
So we started hanging out with him, and I was like, oh wait, like he's actually kind of nice. Y'all are gonna think I'm an awful person, but I promise, just wait. So I was like, oh, he's cute, whatever, and I was gonna let her have her man.
Yeah.
That was gonna be her man, not mine. I was chilling. I was having a great time in my life, and I remember about the third day of camp.
Yeah.
He came up to me before church, and this is like, if you go to church camp, you already know. Asking to go on a walk before church is like a marriage proposal.
It is literally the greatest thing ever.
It's one step before proposing, okay? So I was at church, and we have a prayer service before every evening church service, and I had gone to the prayer service, but I was just kind of hanging out, and Zane walked into the church, and he was like, do you want to take a walk with me before church? I immediately was like, oh crap. So I went and walked with him, but I like tried to keep it as friendly as possible and be like, yeah, buddy. But I was like, isn't Hannah so great? Like, you know, like I thought he was cute, but that was her man.
And then Zane was like, yeah, because he's a little puppy dog.
Yeah. So then Hannah was like, I really think you should go for it. And I was like, go for what? What do you mean? And she was like, I think you should go for Zane. He obviously likes you. And I was like, actually, that was your man. So I'm actually going to ghost him and never talk to him again. And she was like, no, you don't need to do that. And I was like, but you liked him first. He's yours. And she was like, no. I really think like this could be your husband. And at the time I looked at her, I was like, that ain't my husband. This is awkward. But we had a conversation until probably 3:00 one night about this, arguing back and forth about how I was gonna ghost him and she wanted me to talk to him because he could be my husband. So it ended up with me talking to him, obviously.
Yes. Because I'm a very persuasive person.
She is. And I was really nervous, I will say that, because I had a previous relationship that had come from church camp, and it wasn't good.
Yeah.
It ended up being like a really, really hard thing for me to deal with. So I was very wary. I was like, I don't really know. Like, maybe we'll talk for a couple months, and then maybe I'll just like never see him again. But we got together, you know, like very cute, and it was so different. Like I immediately knew like this is my person, and there's actually a story to that too. But we'll probably get into that another time. I knew that was meant to be my husband though, and I knew that he had a heart for the Lord.
Yeah.
And that was the difference that I saw between him and other people, because not only were these other people not of the Lord, they were also putting their identity in me.
Yeah.
And that was also really hurtful, because I had to live up to an expectation of someone I could never be, because I can't be God.
Yeah.
But yes, I did get with Zane, and from there, then Hannah had some experiences in her life that were really hard. I'm sorry, the dogs are barking. And I had to, like, it was like the roles reversed, because I had to be there for her at that point, and I had to learn a whole new thing.
Yeah.
And as much as that hurt you, I think it was good for both of us.
Yeah.
Because that is really when, like, we both started taking things seriously.
Yeah, so after that, I didn't talk about it. Like, I still don't talk about it. Like, I'm not that kind of person. And so, we went through November, we went through December, we got to January. I was like, I am done. Like, it was literally at the New Year's party at 12:00.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm done. I cried.
Yeah.
Because I was done, obviously. Yeah. I mean, it hurts to let go of something that I was identifying in. It hurts to let go of that. It hurts just because like I did some things that I don't agree with now, me. And it hurts just because I wanted it. Um but January rolled around and I was like, I'm done. No more. I got on my word. I was before this in December, I was reading my Bible a lot more, but I was still in that hurt and the despair, and I was still trying to find my identity in that thing. Um so I was like, I'm done. I could not sleep um like after the New Year's party, so I texted one of my friends. I'm gonna call out another one, Sam. I texted
Sam, we love you. Go check out the Lamppost podcast.
Yes,
Sam, we love you so much.
we love her. The Lamppost podcast. Anyways, so I texted her and we were texting back and forth, and then I was like, okay, I think I'm good now. And then I texted her again, and thank the Lord she was up. Thank the Lord. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna call you and we're gonna pray. This girl went to war for me. She went to war, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I could finally go to sleep. I had peace, and I woke up the next morning and I was like, I'm done. I was so lukewarm, and I didn't even notice. The Lord had to put me in a place to notice that I was lukewarm. He had to literally let me break to notice that I was lukewarm, and putting my identity in other things, and I was trying to fill that void that Maddi was talking about. I was trying to fill it with other things. And not that it was bad things, not that it was like ungodly people, but I was trying to fill it with people. And I looked at Maddi one night and I was like, she was like, dang, that's kind of like, that's a little rude. But I was like, everybody's going to disappoint me because I'm looking for God in other people.
Right.
Like, that's literally what I was doing. I was looking for something that humans literally could not give me.
Right.
So everybody was disappointing me.
Yeah.
Because Jesus was the only one that could give that to me.
Yeah. Also, not to cut you off.
You're good.
Let me just say, just from an outside perspective, how much it mattered to have friends who love the Lord.
Yeah.
Because just like she said, she called Sam, and Sam was there for her. Also, she called me one night upset over something regarding this situation, and she said the sentence, I can't believe they would do that. And I was like, back up.
Because this was from a separate party.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't even, like,
this wasn't even someone who was related. Like, it was literally, there was someone in this situation who was speaking to someone else. This third person was not even related to this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, back up.
Yeah.
Like, that is not God-fearing Hannah. This is something that you have let consume you.
Yes.
I was like, back up for a second and let's regroup, because I don't think that's who you need to blame in this situation.
And I praise God and I thank him so much for giving me a teachable spirit in that moment, because as soon as she said that, as soon as she checked me, I was like, you're right.
But also, it's so important to have people who will be real with you.
Yeah.
I could have been like, yes, girl, they shouldn't have done that. Like, they're so rude.
Yeah.
And, like, gone on a whole rant about how they're an awful person. I don't even know who this person is. Yeah. Like, I genuinely don't know them.
Yeah.
And if I was in a similar situation, I would expect the same from her. Like, that is godly friendship. Yeah. Is keeping each other accountable.
Yes. But doing so with grace.
Yeah. Like I wasn't like,
yell at me.
I wasn't like, Hannah, you're messing up so bad. You need to go to the altar and repent right now. That is not.
Because she knew I was hurt. Right. She knew that. And my feelings in this moment were valid. And I think it's good that the Lord pulled me out before I wallowed in it. But she realized that my feelings were valid. But she also, with grace, corrected me. And I'm thankful that the Lord in that moment gave me a teachable spirit. Again, like, as soon as she did it, as soon as she corrected me, I literally was like, you're right. I'm sorry. Like, I literally apologized, because I was like, she is right. Like, I should not have been that way. This person has done nothing to me. This person is sweet. I shared some words with this person before. This person's sweet. There was no harm. There was no foul. Like, she didn't mean anything by this.
Are we ready to move on?
Yes, we're ready to move
Okay. So, we're gonna, actually, this isn't backtracking. This has all happened over the span of church camp, which was in June, up until about last month.
Yeah.
So we knew that we were going to be doing a podcast. We did not know the name.
We we went through so many names.
Let me tell you, I was struggling because like I feel like with words and like art and stuff, I am the more like expressive creative person. Her thing is like fashion and makeup. I am words and art.
Yes.
So I was the one that was taking the liberty to be like, what do you think about this name, or what do you think about that name?
But I am going to applaud Maddie because she is a very like, I'm leading this person. Like, she wants to have control over it. And every time I was like, I don't like the name, she was like, but she would move on. Like, she would be like,
but let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it was. So I, at this point, and I would say you probably were too, I was starting to think like, I can't think of a name, so like maybe this wasn't God.
Me too. Yes.
Like maybe this wasn't what we were supposed to do. So I had in my mind, I was like, okay, Lord, you know the name of this podcast. I don't know it yet. And I was like, but I know that it's going to be something that we both agree on. And I know it's going to be something that has never been used before.
That was our thing.
Yeah.
Like, she was putting these names, and I was like, I feel like that's generic. And she was like, well, what does it matter? And I was like, I feel like it matters. Like, that's what was in my spirit. I was like, I feel like that matters. And she was like, okay. So she went with it.
Yeah. And that's some obedience right there. Just gonna throw that out there. But I continuously, and I think where I went wrong is I wasn't like just waiting like on the Lord to give it to me. He definitely released it to me in the proper timing. His timing's always correct. But I would send her names like probably like 4 or 5 times a week.
Crazy.
I was like, what about this one? And like they'd be really cute, catchy names, like, but it just wasn't right. So one evening I was driving home from work and I was just like, okay, I have no idea, but I know that I think this is from you. So I'm just going to sit here and listen to my worship music. And I asked that you just give me a name. And I just sat there and I heard like nothing for a minute. There was nothing. And then I just felt it in my spirit. I texted Hannah while driving. Don't do that. I texted her because I couldn't wait till I got home. I was so excited. Also, I looked on Instagram, I looked on Spotify. I was like, I can't find this name anywhere.
Yes.
So I guess I knew I was going to check it before I sent it to her so she couldn't say it was generic. I sent her the name and she was like, oh my gosh, like, I really like that. And I was like,
yes.
That was the Lord. I was like, that's so exciting. We have a name.
Because me and Maddie are polar opposites. We love each other. We do a lot of the same things, but we do it so differently.
And you can see, like, literally, we were just talking about this before we started filming. Our outfits reflect our personalities.
Yes.
They're so completely different.
It's so funny.
But that is how the podcast name came to be. And honestly, that was like our confirmation along with some other things. If you want to share that, you can.
I do want to share, like, before we started this, I told her, I think it was like end of last year. I don't think it was at the beginning of this year. I told her, I was like, she was talking to me about all the podcast stuff. I was like, let's just save so we can get all of these like nice things, a camera, some good mics. Obviously, we do not have the great mics, but we got lapel mics, but it's fine. I was like, let's just save. I said, girl was lying through her teeth, by the way. I was like, I don't feel a rush in my spirit to do this like right away. I was like, we can do it at the end of 2025. And I went to Winter Fire and I filmed a podcast with Sam, Lamppost Podcast, love her. We were filming and two girls came up to us and they were like, so you guys are on a podcast? And Sam was like, yeah, she's just a guest on mine, but she has her own podcast with her best friend. And they were like, oh, where can we follow that? And I was like, we don't have it up yet. And they were like, girl, you need to get it up. And so I was praying about it at this camp and I felt the Lord say, you knew you had a rush in your spirit about this. You knew you felt me all over this and you needed to go ahead and start it. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, spiritual spanking right there. Like, it was not fun because I was like, now I gotta go back to Maddie and be like, we need to go ahead and do this. And she'll know that I lied to her.
Also, I'm just gonna add this in. This is all about how the podcast came to be. But at church camp this past year, this is when like we knew that we had to do this. But it wasn't confirmation on like when we should start. So she got that at Winterfire, but at church camp back in the summertime is when and it's so crazy now. Like thinking back, it is so crazy to me now because our name is Revival Ready.
Yeah.
I remember the last night of camp, it was crazy, y'all. Like crazy, crazy, crazy. Church was amazing. The best church service I've ever been to in my entire life. It changed my life forever.
Yeah.
And I received so much from the Lord. And I go back to the dorm, and Hannah is pacing back and forth, and she is just still in the spirit. And she repeatedly, more than once, I don't even know if she remembers this, but repeatedly, she said, it starts with us. And it starts with us. It starts with us. And she was like, I'm getting chills right now thinking about this. She was like, revival is going to break out and it is going to start with us. She said, I don't know how, I don't know where, but that is what I'm receiving. And she just kept on repeating this over and over. And I don't, like I said, I don't even know if you remember any of this.
I remember telling you, and like I remember because she received her calling at this night service, and I remember literally looking at her and I was like, you received it, didn't you? And she was like, yeah. And then I told her what it was.
It was crazy, like, because I did not say anything to anyone. Okay, I received it. I was like, I hear you.
And then she went to the
back
dorm.
to the dorm, and this woman looked me in my eyes and told me exactly what it was. I was like, I didn't even get the joy of telling you. Okay.
Yeah. The Lord is a tattletale. I realized that lately.
I also knew that night that I was gonna marry Zane before we were even together. But so from that point forward, we know, like, I was talking to someone a little while back, and this was after the podcast social medias went live, and they were like, I told them the story, like pretty much the very condensed version of what y'all are getting right now.
Yeah.
I told her that, and she was like, oh, well, I thought you were just being, like any basic white girl and making a podcast. I was like, wow, okay. And I just want to preface, like, this is nothing what that is. Like, this is nothing like that.
This whole story, all of this testimony is to let you guys know that this is not something that we took lightly at all.
No.
This, like, even when I posted it on my story, I was like, me and Maddie made a prayerful decision. Like, I made sure, like, this is something we prayed about and fasted about before.
Yeah.
Before we even thought of a name.
And as much as we are here for a great time, we are here to talk about the Lord. This is his podcast, okay?
Yes.
This is something he placed in our lives and he entrusted us with. And I am so eternally grateful for that because I think this is such a cool calling.
Yes.
And so great for us personally. But this is not just something that we did on a whim. This is the Lord. And I don't know where it's going to go. She doesn't know where it's going to go. There could be one person that this needs to reach. And if that one person is reached, that is all I care about.
And just to let you guys know, this podcast is just as much for us as it is for you.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
Like, we learned so much from just talking to each other in Maddie's car. And we want to share that with everybody that we can. I really think that's why the Lord put it on our hearts. We're really, really excited to share what the Lord has laid on our hearts, because we can relate. We can relate to young adults. We can relate to teenagers. And obviously we're not these older people that's like, well, I've been through so much, but we can relate to you. We can relate to being lukewarm for a season. We can relate to being on fire the next. We can relate to a bunch of these things that we're going through. And I'm really excited to see what the Lord is going to do in this podcast. Like, even if it
I'm
reaches
very
the
excited.
82 followers we've already got, if
Yeah.
it just reaches those people, like,
Yeah.
I am so excited, and we are so ready to like get into the word and stuff like that. We are so excited about this.
I love the word.
I love the word. We always be texting each other like, "Have you read this? What is the point of this? Like, can you like help me?" And I just love that the Lord has also given us the freedom to speak to each other like that.
Yeah.
Like, I can text her and be like, I don't understand this at all.
Or like, OMG, girl, did you see what he did there?
Yes. Like
Like,
he already gave us such a comfort around each other.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that he put this calling over our lives.
Yeah.
So you guys can be expecting some words. Okay, I'm so excited. I have a stir in my spirit about this. I'm so excited. Maybe one podcast we'll just open our Bibles and read. Like, we don't know. We're really letting the Lord lead us. If we do say something that's out of context, hopefully we do not. We are very prayerful about everything. Yeah. But if we ever do, be kind, but definitely let us know. Yeah. Like, if you're like,
reach out to us.
Girl, why would you say that? That is not biblical.
We are still learning just as much as anyone else, but we're just trying to honestly give you a safe space.
Yeah.
This is somewhere where you can come learn with us.
Yeah.
Come relate with someone, because, you know, you always see these stories on Instagram and it's like, oh yeah, I had 4 kids in high school and was addicted to crack and then I came to the Lord. Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. That is a great testimony. But that's not what everyone's life looks like.
No.
Our testimonies, we're pretty boring.
We are pretty boring.
But praise God for boring, because I didn't have to overcome a drug addiction. I didn't have to overcome a sex addiction.
Yeah.
I have a boring testimony, but I would love nothing more than to give my children a boring testimony.
Yes. And honestly, though, like, even if you have a boring testimony, that can feel so much like a roller coaster while you're living it. Like, obviously, when we tell you about it, like, I feel like it can be boring. But when you are living that, like, when you go from such a dullness and then to literally life in Christ, like, that's crazy. That's a crazy jump.
Is, because I every year Thanksgiving at our church we go around. Y'all, I know y'all hate this being on the spot, so you can relate with us here. They go around and we give like pretty much a summary of things that we're thankful for that happened during the year.
Yeah.
And this past year, all I could think about was like the joy and the peace over my life, because I had struggled with like anxiety and panic attacks for years.
Yeah.
And I was redeemed. I was made new, made whole. I was ecstatic, and honestly, it still hasn't worn off. Yes. I am still so joyful.
Me too.
I think I'll be joyful for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Trials may come, my joy will remain, because my joy is now,
that's a word,
in the Lord.
Yes, we love that.
But we have kept you here for nearly an hour. I would be on the lookout for it. 2 episodes a month. That is our goal. Yes. We both work full time. We will try our best.
Yes.
But this has been awesome. Yes. And I'm so glad that y'all are here listening and hanging out with us. This is our goal, and I hope that you come back for the next episode. Check us out on Instagram as well.
Yes, we will be putting out some pretty cool posts. Anything that the Lord lays on our heart, like a verse or encouraging word, we're planning on posting those.
Yeah.
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. We're Facebook moms. Facebook.
Shout out to all our Facebook moms.
Yes.
We love you so much.
We love you. You are such a support. Like, we love your support so much.
Just make sure you like, you comment, you share this with someone who loves the Lord, share this with someone who does not love the Lord. Yes. We just want to be a part of your lives.
Yes. We're trying to share the love of God.
We are. And I am so excited to have you here, and I hope that you return and that we can have more talks like this.
But like I said, we are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok.
Just a little subtle plug. But Thank you so much for listening in today, and we
Yes.
will see you next time on Revival Ready.
Yes. We love you and Jesus loves you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.